I am very pleased to start off this summit with our conversation on how to forge a European industrial deal to complement the Green Deal. I'll be joined on stage now by Guillaume, but also by Beatriz Yordi. She is the Director for Carbon Markets and Clean Mobility at DG CLIMA. Guillaume, you could come back. Yeah, you have to come up here. You thought you were leaving, but you weren't. Klaus Schneider, the CTO of Liebherr-Aerospace and Transportation SAS, and joining us online, I haven't seen him yet, is Roberto Cingolani, the CEO of Leonardo.
Hello.
Oh, there, I see you. I can see you in the mirror. There you are. Okay. All right, I'm going to take a seat and we're going to get started. Thank you very much to everyone for being here. So, as many people are aware, especially in this community, the call for an industrial deal to complement the Green Deal is not an entirely new idea. Just this past February, for example, almost 75 business leaders from 17 sectors signed and presented to Ursula von der Leyen the Antwerp, I hear a bunch of feedback, calling for an industrial deal. Now the Draghi report released in September, which is going to be a guide for the next commission, highlights three priority areas. The first being the need for closing what he calls the innovation gap and improving productivity. The second one, the need for a joint plan linking decarbonization and competitiveness. And the third, increasing security. These are some of the same themes that Guillaume already spoke about. Draghi actually weaves them together very well in his report, and it's not a terrible read. I read it to prepare for this. It's very interesting. And now, of course, Commission President von der Leyen has announced a clean industrial deal, which she wants to set out in her first 100 days. And that's why Beatriz is here. She's going to explain at least some elements of what the Commission chief is preparing. Of course, the Commission is not approved yet, so some of this is hypothetical, and it will be spread over several Commission positions. So I'm glad you have to explain this and not me, Beatriz. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and a pleasure to be here. It's just to say, because I see a counter in front of me, the 100 days have not yet started. We need a commission in place that we are about to. And I will start copying the Secretary General words, because we say, he said decarbonization is the license to growth. And I think that this is the spirit of the Clean Industrial Deal. The Clean Industrial Deal will be, as you said very well, it will be put in place under the 100 days. And the idea is how we are accompanying industry, how we are creating the innovation, the energy conditions, the context to allow our industry to grow. And that this growth needs to be compatible with decarbonization. We know, and the Draghi mentions that aviation and maritime, that there are two sectors with hard to abate, not easy life for diminishing the emissions, but not impossible. And he has estimated the order of 100 billion per year, 2031, 2050. So where is this money need to come from? What is going to be? And I represent the emission trading, and I cannot talk about competitiveness without talking about the ETS, sorry for that. But it's carbon pricing. I mean, what is this measure? And we know, for example, that carbon pricing is offering the sustainable aviation fuel. I mean, this is a scheme that pays the difference between kerosene and sustainable fuels. But what the seed, as we call it, the Clean Industrial Deal, is what to put in. So I will have an emphasis.
Oh, is that the acronym?
I just invented.
You just, okay.
I just invented.
I hadn't heard it yet.
Clean Industrial Deal is shorter.
The SID,
all right. The SID is shorter. But, you know, we are very strong in acronyms in the Commission. But it will be clearly, I will have an emphasis on energy-intensive industries, but not only. Clean tech need to be part of that, and other industries need to be part of that. First, we need our masters to be put in place to be able to say what will be the orientation. But in the last, in the hearing, and also in the hearing of Commissioner Hoekstra and Vice President Rivera, that, as you know, crossing fingers for the new commission to come. But we need to put tools, and to put transversal tools also that concern all our strong industries. Aviation is clearly one of them, so it will need to be put on the table. Are we considering that? Because it's I'm talking to already convinced convince Forum, but connectivity, industrial per se, defense is a very strong one. So what the Clean Industrial Deal will include is still early days, because even if we have short time, still early days. But this decarbonization and growth, it will be there. Enabling condition will be there. Energy, and it will be also accompanied by affordability, energy communication. And this Clean Industrial Deal also to clarify that it will be the accompanying one to the target for 2040. I don't need to convince you that the cost of inaction, the adaptation to climate change, the cost that, I'm from Spain, so it has been, we have a tragic experience now, but 3 years ago it was Germany and Belgium and Slovenia, so it's all over, or Greece. So we will need an action there. And I think that in this decarbonization and cost of inaction will be a part of the equation, and the seats will be also accompanying the 90% on the new climate law change that we try to amend to put what corresponds to 2040 target in the path for 2050. Sorry. But in short, competitiveness, growth, a clean industry. We take the course and we stay the course for the Fit for 55, but we need to concentrate on how to accompany industry in this path to decarbonizing.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, it's a quite vague overview because, as you say, things are not in place yet. And when Commission Chief von der Leyen laid this out, she also didn't have very many specifics. So I think that, this is the most we know so far. I'm going to ask the rest of the panelists to respond, but what would you say is the most important measure, if you could, that you know of so far?
It's horrible to come to such an important conference like this one without having yet a commission in place and 100 days. What I can say is not the most important measure. I don't think that it will be the winner one. But we will need to be transversal, and we will need to put because it's no one silver bullet. I think that working in competitiveness, you will agree that is not one silver bullet. But clearly, funding, access to finance and infrastructure, and energy prices, these three will be part of it.
Okay, so those are goals if we don't know exactly how we're going to get there yet. Now I'm going to turn to Guillaume. From what we know so far, is this something that also the industry side, the business side is also excited about? Do you share the goals and see a way to get there? Is everybody sharing the same ambitions, at least on this?
Well, I think it's a bit premature to be excited about it. But I think it's the time...
Jan said we were going to be exciting, so I'm trying to just live up to this. Be exciting, Guillaume.
It will come over the course of the day. But I think it's time to recognize the need for it. And if there's one excitement, that's probably that one at that stage. Because we've put a lot of things on the agenda in Europe. Of course, decarbonization was very high on the agenda. But what the Letta and the Draghi reports have shown is, as we were doing this over the course of the last 20 years, we've lost a lot of competitiveness. We've really lagging behind the US in particular when it comes to growth and therefore to the ability to compete in the world, to invest, to be at the scale that we need. We see that there is desindustrialization on a lot of sectors that is at play, and in the Draghi report there is a quite stark assessment of the situation that we share. So we believe it's more than time to make sure we combine what we want to do in the green agenda and what it needs to be to have to create the value, to create the prosperity, and it comes down to competitiveness. So combining competitiveness and combining it with decarbonization, sustainability in a broader sense is, in my perspective, is in our perspective, extremely important. And we have actually some indicators of the fact that it's very difficult in Europe today to face a situation where your business cases for investment continue to fly with the regulatory environment that has been put in place, in particular when it comes to to carbon. And that's something that would lead to what Draghi has called the slow agony of decline, which in my perspective is a slow agony of decline till the point it becomes a very fast agony of decline, like what we see in situations where you're progressively losing momentum. There's a point where it becomes just a collapse. So I think recognizing the need to move from a Green Deal to a clean industrial deal is something that makes a lot of sense. I think there should be a sense of urgency in Europe on that topic. If competitiveness is one more objective among others, we won't be doing the right things. There is a huge need for simplification. The regulatory framework which has been put in place, when you look at why we're doing things one by one, is probably full of good intention, but the result is shocking. And that makes, as I said earlier, the justification of business cases of how we would deploy capital, how we would invest, how we would fuel growth and prosperity no longer meaningful in Europe compared to the rest of the world. Therefore, I consider for the new Commission what the Draghi report has put on the table is a call for urgent action. And if this is what is put into the clean industrial deal, then that's good news. That's why we want to be part of it. We really believe in Europe. We believe in the intentions. We believe in the agenda. We believe in the values. But it has to translate into something that works. And that's what I would expect from the clean industrial deal. What is the seed? I don't know yet either.
I'm going to pick up on a couple of things that you mentioned to turn now to Klaus, because the Draghi report made clear that European industry is under more regulation, has a heavier burden than in my home country, the US, for example, or in many other countries. And that makes it more expensive to do business. It makes this a more difficult challenge. So Klaus, I mean, nobody in Europe is going to say we give up on the environmental ambitions, but at the same time, you will be expecting that to be met halfway here, right? I mean, the Draghi report says that this needs to be linked, decarbonization and competitiveness. They can't be seen separately.
Yes, first of all, I think we have to fully support the Green Deal, so there's no compromise. We have to address this topic, decarbonization, thus ensuring the long-term sustainability of the aerospace sector.
And the planet.
However, we should be very sensitive to care this task very sensitive to be competitive and innovative at the same time. If we would not achieve this, we do not reach the goal which we all want to achieve. And on business side, I'm here speaking as a tier 1 system supplier. We invested massively in, for example, REACH compliance the last years. That's really a huge task, not only money, but also from the resources side, which is missing on the other side in further innovations there. So we do not blame, but we have to find the right balance between the regulatory and the business cases. So that's how to find the right track to reach both targets. So that's a very difficult situation in the moment, and it's the complete supply chain, inclusive OEM, are addressed with these regulations which are rising up and up. We have the environmental regulations, we have the bureaucracy, so it's a very tough situation in the moment. And so we have to find collaborations, partnerships to be able to address these topics all on the same time.
Okay, we'll definitely come back. She's writing a lot of notes. I'm going to bring Roberto in first for his first intervention. And Roberto, your background is very interesting because you've actually worked for Mario Draghi, right? You were his ecological commissioner. I looked this up. His Minister for Ecological Transition. So you are extremely well positioned to discuss this today. So now, as a physicist who's also a CEO, I'm really interested to hear about the technology. I'm looking at him in the mirror. That's the only way I can. I'm really interested to hear about the technology that's going to help us get there. How much of it already exists and how much is just on this wish list for development and hoping that this will be the answer to some of the problems that simply doesn't exist yet?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to recall what Guillaume said before. It is remarkable what the civil aviation has accomplished already, because it's true that we need less than 2 liters of fuel per passenger, despite we're going much faster than a car with the same consumption. So I think a lot of work has been done. However, as a matter of fact, aviation is producing approximately 2.5 of the greenhouse gas, 2.5%. And therefore, we need an effort. Now, if you see the menu of technologies, I mean, according to my understanding, none of those is really close to come, with the exception of the sustainable aviation fuel. In a nutshell, I mean, if you dream to have an electric aircraft at the moment, you have to face the problem that batteries are producing some 200 watt-hour per kilo. And with such a capacity for a short-range aircraft, you would need maybe 3 tons of batteries. For a long-range aircraft, you would need some maybe 10, 20, 30 tons of batteries. That makes the solution at the moment unfeasible unless there is a breakthrough in the battery technology. And this is actually something that big companies in energy are trying to do, but for the time being, we are around 200 watt-hour per kilo. And this seems to be a threshold difficult to overcome with the present technologies. If you consider hydrogen, well, of course, hydrogen can be used as a fuel, direct fuel in combustion, so you produce water vapor. The problem is that the density per volume in energy is not very high, so you need to compress hydrogen. So you have to store hydrogen in high pressure tanks, like 700 bars or so, or you need to keep the hydrogen liquid at very, very low temperature, less than 250 centigrades. And therefore, this means redesigning completely the aircraft. You know, a lot of problems in the fueling system. And I would like to remind also that the green hydrogen at the moment costs 5 to 7 euro per kilo. So that will be considerably more expensive than any other fuel. So for sure, hydrogen is promising, but it doesn't seem to be right behind the corner. There's a lot of work to be done. You can use fuel cells, so considering having an electric power system powered by fuel cells, but you face the same problem with hydrogen. And least but not last, you have the sustainable aviation fuels. Those are the most promising. At the moment, you can have sustainable fuels by waste, plastic waste, biomass, even algae from the sea. The point is to produce in a massive quantity those fuels, which is not the case at the moment. They're still quite more expensive than kerosene. They're very compatible with the existing engines, so this is an enormous advantage. And even the distribution infrastructure would be compatible to the one we have, but we need a massive production. We have to be careful and not to increase deforestation for that, of course, and we need to improve the infrastructure for production. I think we are at the beginning of this roadmap. I mean, in Leonardo, for instance, our helicopters now are flying 30%, approximately 30% of the tests are done using SAF, but a lot of work has to be done there. So, I mean, this is an open challenge, and there's a lot of work to do, a lot of R&D investment also.
Okay, so we have to talk about money. I mean, you mentioned it a bit, but I want to allow Beatriz, I want to allow you to go back on the notes that you've written. And I also want to remind everybody that we will take questions from the audience. So I'm very much hoping that people come up with some questions for these very knowledgeable guests. But first, I will let you address each other. Beatriz.
Thanks a lot. Just to comment on the innovation part, and I'm very happy that Ricardo intervention. Innovation clearly will be is an obvious one, that it will be part of the CID or SIT, but it is something already part of the Green Deal and part of everyday business. And Draghi report also mentioned something comparing to the US, that when we compare the level of public research, we are similar pace. When you compare the level of private investment, there's no pas de photo, as the French say. There's no comparison. So there is also a plea that we will need to put. And just to put in the regulation, I think that on simplification, I think that there we need my begging to the industry and important stakeholders, if you can clarify exactly what. Because sometimes we can keep in a general one, and we all, I'm sure that we all agree that we will need to simplify things. But of course, simplify doesn't mean deregulate. Because also the regulation, could offer innovation opportunities. Just giving a tip, and I finished. The innovation fund that comes from polluter pays money has just spent 5 billion in the last call. And part of that was sustainable aviation fuels or an electric hybrid plane in France, a French product. So sometimes the regulation can also be an arm or a source of investment in innovation. But so a plea on specifying more, what is the simplification, because we all agree on the simplification. And just to say that I think that in the research, one of the things that there are many voices convinced is that we need to cover, and coming back again to Draghi, is when you pick up the valley of death, that they call it, that is a horrible name, and this investment gap, that Europe is also lagging behind in close to markets. It's not lagging behind in brilliant ideas. So we will need to do something there, not only under SID, but also on the other type of programs.
This is a discussion that's held across all kinds of spheres, isn't it? We could be talking about so many different aspects of Europe versus US and competitiveness. Guillaume, you look like you want to talk, but I wanted to post this back to the industry guys. Does it feel like regulation, like just the knowing that more regulation is coming feels like a burden already? I think, Klaus, you kind of talked about that.
Yeah. If I may, I think we have had a huge over-regulation in the past years. So if deregulation means coming back a step backwards and making it more digestible, yes, I am in favor of deregulation, but I would not call it deregulation, because indeed what we've seen coming has been huge in all fields of things. Each time there is a new word, there is a new regulation. Data Act, Cybersecurity Act, Digital Act, NIS2, and then we have, I don't know if I mentioned the Cloud Act, and then we have CSRD, CS3D. It's unmanageable. It's unmanageable. As a leader, I've been spending a third of my time in the past year on CSRD. There's no benefit for European companies on CSRD. The benefit is for others. We're just making the European companies more vulnerable with the CSRD. And then CS3D is even worse. So yes, we need to be more mindful of regulations. And one by one, they all have a good purpose. I'm not challenging the purpose of the regulation. But when you look at them all together for the industries, it's just unmanageable. And when we're speaking to investors, the question we're receiving today, all industries, it's not specific to aerospace, is there still a business case to invest in Europe? Can you tell us why we would invest in Europe? And actually, the answer is becoming very difficult. That's something that needs to be taken serious. We can't be decarbonizing, having a Green Deal, an agenda to decarbonize, if there is not a single euro that can be justified on investing for future technologies that will decarbonize and answer to needs of consumers. So that's why I was mentioning at the beginning, there's an urgency here to rebalance and find a way that investment capital can be deployed to projects that would contribute to growth, to prosperity, and decarbonization. Because it cannot be decarbonization or profitability. It will be decarbonization if there is also profitability associated with the projects that will lead to decarbonization. And I think that has been put on the back burner for some years. It needs to be put on the agenda again, or, I think you said it very rightly, or we will fail on the objective. And that's what we fear. And it's not just for aviation, it's for a lot of industries. I hear the same from all my colleagues of other sectors of the industry. That's why it's important. It's again making sure we do the right things to reach the objectives. What we have done so far is not doomed to success. It will fail if we don't change it. And yes, it will mean to have a look back of what has been done and being factual and recognizing that some of the steps we have taken are counterproductive, and this needs to be changed. And we do this all the time in the private sector, in the industries. We have to face the brutal reality of the success or failure of what we do, and then correct. And here, I would call it failure. There's too much regulation. it kills the purpose of regulation. If there's no project that can go through the filter of a business case, of a reason to invest money, to deploy capital, as we call it. So that's really important that the new commission, with the leadership of Ursula von der Leyen, is taking a look at what's the situation, what we're saying. Probably the CID is an opportunity to bring this. We are not fighting against the objective, but we believe the ways, the conditions that have been put in place to do this need to be revised, need to be looked at again. And yes, potentially we will have to simplify the existing regulation. I don't call it deregulation, but if you call it deregulation, then let's go for it to make sure that the purpose of what we're doing is successful.
Klaus?
I fully support Guillaume in his speech. And it's not only the OEM who has to fulfill all these regulations. The OEM says, okay, tier 1, please. You also, if I would justify this, you have also to fulfill. And we as tier 1 are going to tier 2 and so on. So it's a complete chain fulfilling this, not senseless, but okay, very, very intensive activities which are not bringing the value further. So I rely more on creativeness, on innovations, on where we have a business case, for example, making an aircraft more energy efficient. Lightweight components by 3D printing, by materials and so on, by enabling most efficient aerodynamic things, so we can save maybe further 20-30% only by these activities. And you do not need any regulation. It's a self-runner. If the business case, the operating costs are going down, this will be done. So I'm a friend of less regulations, not more regulations.
Roberto, I'm going to give Beatriz a chance to respond to this, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, I can't see if you have your hand up to speak, but Beatriz, why don't we go ahead and respond?
I think that, let me pass a message, and probably I will not be very popular. But I think
but you're very brave to be representing the Commission here.
Let's be a little bit of freshness. We pass a COVID crisis, right? And I think the European reaction, because we need the industry also recognizing the value of European policies. As I think that we absolutely need to recognize the role of industry in Europe and the very important role of aviation industry. But we have a COVID crisis. It was RRF. We went to the markets to lend money to be able to inject it in the economy. And I think that has not been recognized, to be honest. And it's not us brave functionaries. It was a political decision-making and backed by Council and Parliament. But it was the RRF injecting in the economy. We put a streamlining, a state aid to be able to inject into the industry. And I think that this is not recognized enough. So I think that if we are giving an image of Europe and an image of decarbonization as a kind of bureaucratic image, I think that we are doing something wrong. I'm happy to take note of exactly what, and you have one example, this CRC-RD and the monitoring regulation or reporting. But I think that we need to be also not to lose the large picture. The last picture is that the cost of inaction, we are talking in Valencia region, and allow me, I will not be dramatic, but it was 33% of GDP, is one of the most richest regions in Europe. We are talking about billions of euros of climate change. And last year, fossil fuel invoice, because as in one political debate, we have a scoop, Europe doesn't have fossil fuels. So we are importing fossil fuels, and this is security of supply. So I think that happy to simplify, and I think this is fundamental, but we need to engage with the industry in more innovative, proactive, looking forward, otherwise we will not make a business case of decarbonization.
Fair enough.
No, can't agree more.
Yeah.
We are here to have that debate, that dialogue. There are plenty of things that have been done in the right way. We are the leaders of aviation in the world, so we can't have been wrong altogether. I would have my comments on COVID. So
no,
I think
not on my panel.
We should not comment on COVID. You're not allowed to operate. You're not allowed to fly. You're not allowed to operate as a company.
No.
But we give you money to compensate. So, okay. we could have a debate.
Okay,
but this behind us, this is not something we will change. We can only change the future. And a lot of things have been done in the direction of decarbonization. As I said earlier, we're completely committed to decarbonization. We think that's the license to grow, so we're fully in. So there's nothing that we complain on the objectives. It's just that the way we do things is too counterproductive at the moment. And that's why we need to continue to address, to find the next steps to how do we refine, how do we modify, how do we improve, how do we upgrade. So we find the ways to be the first one in the world to have a sustainable, performing industry that is going decarbonization forward. And that's what we are calling for, nothing more, nothing less. And I think on the purpose, on the objective, we are well aligned, but then it becomes execution, and we all know that in the execution in this complex world, it's a difficult task. So we're here for collaborating, for finding the ways together, for helping Commission, Europe, the states of Europe find the way, the right way of doing this. And we have done our mistakes as well, so we don't want to be blaming anybody. It's just that we need to be fair on what is working and what is not. And today there is really a challenge on the fact that what has been put in place for decarbonization is disabling a lot of business cases and therefore will not support reaching the objective of decarbonization. That's why we need to be back to the drawing board, as we say, and work again. That's why I think the clean industrial deal is the opportunity of doing this, but it needs to be without trying to find people guilty or not guilty. It will come only through collaboration and partnership, and that's what we are calling for. And
Roberto,
trying to contribute to.
When you were in charge of ecological transition, did you find any solutions on the national scale that you think could apply now as the industrial deal on a European level starts becoming launched?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, let me start with a disclaimer. I think I'm one of the most convinced European you can find on the continent. And as a scientist, I started 4 years ago with a very early stage European programs for research. So I hope you don't doubt that I'm a convinced European. However, I think I should say something about what the Commissioner said before. As a Minister of Energy and of Ecological Transition in the Draghi government, I experienced personally something that I hope will never happen again. The Commission was not technology neutral, and I think the concept of silver bullet, like only the electric car will fix the problem, only the renewable will fix the problem, was a big mistake that today the European industry is paying very much. So it is correct that the industries have to invest, but it's also correct that the direction given by Europe should be technology neutral, because the mistake was to claim that there was a single solution for a very diversified and differentiated problem. And this is exactly the case we're discussing today. I hope in the new course, we will have a much more interaction and more possibility to discuss. I could make a long list of examples, including the fact that, for instance, there was a refusal of biocompostable plastics and only recyclable plastic was approved. I mean, those things were basically technical and scientific mistakes, because it was assumed that there was a single technology fixing all the problems. I hope this will not be the case again in this new 5 years. And I say this as the biggest fan of Europe. I hope it's clear. I say this for my kids, for our for the next generations, and also for our industries. With this in mind, as Minister of Energy, yes, we found a solution for Italy at least, because we differentiated the gas supply going to Africa, where we had a number of cultivation fields. I think you remember during the crisis after the war exploded, Italy and Germany were importing about 40% of their gas from Russia. In about 6 months, we got rid of the Russian dependence, and we're still now surviving from the energy supply point of view, according to the diversification of the gas suppliers. However, this is not a solution, because we're still depending on something which is outside. And I believe that a good step forward was from the previous Commission to accept in in the new taxonomy that the nuclear energy, it has to be developed by it's a neutral, carbon neutral technology, that it has to be developed in the future. Without this important step forward, I don't think we would ever see the possibility to have an energy independent continent in the future. So I hope the discussion will be technically grounded in the future and not ideologically slowed down, because that has been a big mistake.
Beatriz?
I thought it was going to be a very easy panel. Just to say, because also
It's very friendly.
It
wants to
friendly.
be very friendly, okay?
Dynamic is the word I would use.
That's good. Just to say, I was physicist. I'm not physicist anymore. I studied physics also. And I started in renewable energies ages ago. And just to say that a clarification that the Renewable Energy Directive, even it was attacked by some of being non-technological neutral, it was, because you have different choices. And it was clearly a policy, an active policy due to security of supply. And I think we didn't learn the lesson very well in the 80s, and it has come back through the dramatic door, through the invasion of Ukraine. But just to say what the power of innovation and policies, and I just have a positive story, and is that when I started to work in renewable policy, we were at 14% of electricity, of renewable energy in the electricity production. Last year we reached 51%. So it was more renewable than oil and gas, and many of solar it came from Italy, but not only, the whole Europe, north and south, east, west, and we have a wind energy that mentioned by Draghi, and we know that is 30% of world market. And just to say that another positive tip is that we are convinced that also sustainable aviation fuels need to be in the market, and I think that there is a common joint adventure, and this is why we are putting on finalizing the details of this nearly 2 billion on the table for SAF. That I think that it's a positive and forward-looking policy.
We have a panel on that tomorrow.
Very good.
Yeah, that I'm moderating. Okay, I am going to take, do we have questions here? Because otherwise, obviously, we can all talk a lot. Okay, I'll take one. Is there another one? Two? Okay, one question here, and then we'll address it to whichever panelist if it's specific, and otherwise I will let everybody answer that way. But we only have 3.5 minutes left, so please be quick. Here, this lady back here, and this gentleman here.
Hello.
Tell us who you are. Yes. It's
It's on? Oh, sorry. Hello, Anne Damiani. I'm a journalist for Agence Europe. There is a discussion right now at the Council about energy taxation. There is an option about exemption on kerosene. What do you think about it? Will it make, will help the industry to innovate if you have 20 more years to spend kerosene, and also the competition with other mode of transport? What is your opinion on that? Thank you.
Okay, that's a direct question, and I'll take the gentleman's question as well, and then with that, we'll just have to wrap it up that way.
Just a quick one. Given the fact that the US is so focused... Take the mic so everybody
Yeah, we can.
Sid Phillip from Bloomberg News. Just a quick one on the US. Given the fact that the US is, the Trump administration is talking about jettisoning environmental policy and focusing on sort of bringing back other sort of propulsion systems, is it at a disadvantage for Europe to focus so much on it, given the fact that your US competitors will no longer have to bear that burden of development and all of that expenditure?
Okay. All right, I'm going to, I'll start, actually, Roberto, do you have, I'll let each person have an answer to either one of those questions or both of them briefly, but we have 2.5 minutes left, and I would like to try to fit in. Roberto, an answer to either of those? No?
Shall
okay.
I start?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe to both questions. The first thing we need is a global level playing field. And we just want the ability to compete. with the same conditions than our competitors. And we believe that drives innovation, that drives investment in the right direction. And for both cases, that's what we are calling for. So yes, indeed, having a very different view in the rest of the world, in the US in particular, where there's huge investment taking place, that they don't see things in the same way, and that we are actually in Europe with a lot of more regulatory burden, complexity on the regulatory side, and also a way to tax more is really slowing us down on the way. And that's really something that concerns me a lot. There's a joke in industry, but unfortunately it becomes more and more true, that what do countries do in front of a new technology? Well, in the US, they invest and innovate. In Europe, we regulate and tax. And in China, they plan. And unfortunately, that's what we see coming. So we need to be taking a step back and making sure that the way we're doing things in Europe is not putting the Europe industry as a disadvantage for businesses, which are global businesses. And that's what we are in aviation. So that's what I would say to both questions. Having taxes driving things in the right direction, or regulatory framework, that's what we need. And in most of the cases, that's what regulations are doing. But not always. And today, indeed, there's an issue when we compare the ability to innovate, to invest between the two sides of the Atlantic in particular. It's true on regulation, it's true on taxes, it's true also on lack of scale. And there was a comment earlier on investment, on innovation, on R&T. What we see today is scale being supported in the US and the conditions for creating scale being much more favorable than what they are in Europe. And in businesses where scale matters, it's where you have a huge amount of investment for a small number of products, for instance, we are at a big disadvantage. And that's really something that's concerning, that we need to correct instead of exaggerating.
Okay.
And
Guillaume,
then last point, if I may, and I'm stopped.
Quick.
There's a competition between the modes of transport, but there's more than competition. There's complementarity. We think we could have more intermodality of means of transport to the benefit of everyone, and it's not very relevant to oppose means of transport. Sometimes it is, but it remains the minority of cases where we should think as Europeans, what is the right connecting system for the different means of transport, and that would help a lot and make better use of the money of the taxpayer.
Okay, I'd like to give Beatriz the last word. Leave us with any optimism that this is the right way to go, despite obviously a lot of trepidation on the industry side. I mean, there have to be some true believers inside the Commission who are going to take this forward and bring along industry.
I hope not only inside Commission, also
truly?
outside.
Yes.
Well, I think that decarbonization has a case, has a business case, has clearly a more when we compare to inaction and lack of internalization of externalities, so that we are able to put what a coming flood or a coming extreme weather event would mean in economic terms, and also affecting airports, that we know that airports need to come to the adaptation to climate change. So there is a business case for decarbonization. This is one. We need a fairness between competition between transport modes, because I agree, we have the car driving outside carbon pricing and aviation inside carbon pricing. This was not fair. Taxation, the same thing. And I think the third is that we also believe in global solutions. They are more and more difficult, I'm afraid, but doesn't mean that we are not stopping being multilateral actors, and climate change is part of this diplomacy in the world. So let's work on that.
All right, I think that's a good place to end. Thank you so much. I think it was a great panel. I was excited anyway, Leon. This wraps up our first conversation. I'm going to call Jens Flottau here, and he is going to take you into a conversation with the Executive Director of EASA. So thank you very much for your attention.